All right, so what was my job in this project? So my job was to create a code and circuit that made a TMP 36 temperature sensor and control the color of the RGB LED. So I had to create a code that made it so when the temp sensor read 13 degrees Celsius, it was purely blue, and when the temperature sensor read 27 degrees Celsius, it displayed the RGB fully red, and in between it would switch from gradually from blue to red. So what I did was made the color mix, so then it was like green or a mix of blue and yellow for the temperatures in between 13 and 17 degrees Celsius. My other job was to create a calculator using 2 push buttons. The calculator had to do simple multiplication, whereas the one button would control one of the numbers, the inputs, and then the other button would control the other number input. So when I hit one button, it would do 1. When I put the other, it would do 1. And then each time you hit the button, it would add 1 to each input. So then those 2 inputs would create a sum that would display on the LCD. And I also had to do a schemate for both of these, so just to display what the circuit would look like. And then, how did you and your partner work to assign tasks? Could this be improved? So we assigned tasks based on what we felt we were comfortable with, based off experience. So my partner felt like my partner had more experience with coding, so he took some of the projects that required a little bit more difficult coding that I didn't quite feel comfortable with yet, but I felt comfortable with LEDs and push buttons, so I took those 2 projects. And I felt like that was a pretty good way to assign the tasks, because based on time management reasons, I was able to learn what he did without having to waste too much of our time trying to teach myself it as we were doing it. And then, did you always feel productive? Explain this in an honest way. Why or why not? So at times I didn't feel productive, mostly because when I was working on the push button calculator, the LCD screen was not working for like a week, and it wasn't making sense, and we were troubleshooting it, so I did not feel productive while that was happening, because I was just frustrated, and for like a week I stopped pretty much doing everything trying to figure out why the LCD wasn't working, instead of continuing with the project that I was supposed to be doing. A lot of this project was about self-learning. What did you teach yourself to do, and how did that feel? So I taught myself to, use the LCD, which was rewarding in the end because it took me so long to get it to work. I also taught myself how to persevere, because I definitely felt like giving up when the LCD wasn't working, and Mr. Soul could not help me with that. Or he tried to help me with that, but the troubleshooting was we couldn't figure out why it just wouldn't work, because everything looked like it should be working. And I learned that you just sometimes need to take a break and come back to it later, because that's more productive than staring and getting frustrated. And then I also learned that sometimes instead of taking a break, you have to just barrel down and focus, because if you're on a roll, you don't want to stop. And sometimes you don't have the time to stop. You just gotta barrel down and pull it out. Time management is a big thing on projects. What was good about your time management strategy as a group, and what needs to be improved? So what was good about our time management is we worked on both of the projects separately. So we weren't really, we both got to barrel down on each of our projects and focus on it separately. And we both worked on our parts extensively outside of the classroom, which was good for our time management as well, because we definitely would not have been able to finish it on time if we both only did it in the class, period. So something that what needs to be improved time management wise is when something isn't working, just moving on and trying to forget about that piece and working on a different part of the code or circuit or project instead of wasting it on being frustrated with one problem, because the calculator really held me back, because instead of working on the code further, I stopped at the LCD, which I should have just kept working with the code. Recall the most frustrating moment you had during all this. Talk it out. What were you trying to do? How did you figure out how to solve the problem? So, as I said before, the most frustrating moment I had during all of this was definitely the push button, the LCD for the calculator, because the LCD was not working even when I quadruple checked the circuit, the code, and looked for the code online to make sure that it wasn't my code, and I used other people's working codes, other people's working circuits, and it just was not working for me. What I was trying to do with the LCD is display hello worlds on it, but it just was not working. How did I figure out how to solve this problem? I didn't really figure out how to solve it. It just kind of started working one day, and I was like, okay, so that was cool. What was one thing you're proudest of when it comes to this project? I was proudest of finishing the calculator, because it had taken me so long and so much frustration, and it just felt good to finally get it done and that it was finally working. Why? Yeah, because it was just rewarding. What lesson did you carry into this project that you learned from the microbit project? Well, I learned that I was going to get frustrated, because for the microbit and for this project, at points I felt like I finally understood the code and the circuits and how everything worked, and that I felt like I had a code and circuit that would work. But I learned that even though I think that it's not going to, that sometimes it's not going to work, but eventually I will get it. So I just have to keep pushing at it, because it takes me a bit to understand the concepts of coding. How has this experience shaped what you want to do for a final Arduino project? It helped me decide that I want to try something similar to what I'm going to try and do in college, because if I mess up in college, it'll be less forgiving, and I want to get a glimpse of what it is like to code like a prosthetic or something like that, and to know if I'm going to have to work extra hard in college, or even maybe practice some coding over the summer to feel comfortable with it. But I hope it helps me experience, it shaped what I want to do, because I just want to feel more prepared for college before I go into college, because coding is very difficult for me, and I want to really try and understand it more and grasp the concept more of what I'm want to do specifically in college before I attempt to study it on my own.